My name is Emily Carter, and if you passed me on the street, you probably wouldn't look twice. I'm the woman with 2 kids tugging at her arms, groceries balanced in a paper bag, car keys clenched between her teeth as she fumbles for the front door. Ordinary, predictable, safe. For nearly 15 years, I've been married to Daniel, the man who once made my heart race with a single glance. Together, we built the kind of life people nod approvingly at. A tidy suburban house, 2 children, enrolled in good schools, weekends spent at soccer fields and family barbecues. But what looks solid from the outside often has cracks within. Daniel is a good man, steady, responsible, admired by his colleagues. Yet the very qualities that make him reliable also keep him distant. He carries himself like a man forever, weighed down by invisible burdens, deadlines, mortgage payments, unspoken worries. Over time, our conversations became less about us and more about logistics. Who's picking up Sarah from practice, whether the bills were paid, how soon the oil change was overdue. The intimacy we once shared dwindled to hurried goodnights and tired kisses. I told myself this was normal. Every marriage cools with time. But loneliness, even in a bustling home, has a way of gnawing at you slowly, until you start noticing the spaces where warmth used to be. That's when Michael entered the picture, or rather, re-entered. Daniel's younger brother had always been the family's wild spirit, charming, restless, quick with a joke. But now, newly separated and hollow-eyed, he was a shadow of the man we all knew. His visits grew more frequent, under the guise of seeing the kids or catching up, but the truth hung heavy around him. He was unraveling, and though he tried to mask it, I could see it in his shoulders, in the way his smile faltered too soon. At first, I played the role anyone would, the sympathetic sister-in-law. I offered him dinner when I noticed his plate, untouched, asked about his new apartment, reminded him not to lose himself in the chaos. But empathy has a dangerous way of creating bridges where boundaries should stand. He lingered longer at the kitchen table after meals, the kids long in bed, conversation stretching into silence that felt oddly intimate. He confessed his fears, in halting words, the emptiness of waking up alone, the ache of failure that haunted him, the nights when even breathing felt like too much. I listened. I nodded. I told myself I was being kind. Yet somewhere deep inside, I felt something shift. Not love, not yet, but a fragile thread pulling me toward him. That thread would become the very thing I couldn't ignore, the choice I couldn't undo. And though I didn't realize it then, the moment I leaned in closer, the moment I decided I couldn't just stand by, was the moment everything I thought I knew about loyalty, about family, about myself, began to unravel. Michael's presence became a rhythm I hadn't expected in our household. At first, it was convenient. He'd drop by to see the kids, to borrow tools from the garage, to ask Daniel about small repairs. But slowly, his visits shifted into something more personal. He started arriving when Daniel was still at work, knowing I'd be the one answering the door. I told myself it didn't matter. I brewed coffee, set out mugs, listened as he talked. Yet the air between us carried an undercurrent I couldn't ignore. Michael would sit across from me at the kitchen table, shoulders hunched, words tumbling out with a rawness that startled me. "Some nights I just lie there," he admitted once, eyes fixed on his untouched drink. "And I wonder how it all fell apart so fast. I did everything I could, Emily. I swear I did." The vulnerability in his voice tugged at something inside me. I recognized that ache, the sense of giving so much and still being unseen. For a moment, it felt as though he was speaking my own unspoken truths aloud. But every step closer to him meant a step away from Daniel. I noticed myself growing sharper, with my husband, impatient when he brushed past me with a distracted nod, resentful of how little space he gave to notice me. It wasn't that Michael replaced Daniel. It was that Michael reminded me of what I was missing. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Michael stayed later than usual. Rain tapped steadily against the windows, and the house felt cocooned in its quiet. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling as if words had been pressing against his chest all day. "You know what hurts the most?" he said softly. "It's not the loneliness. It's the feeling that you don't matter to the person you gave everything to." The words hung in the room like a confession. My throat tightened. I could have said them myself. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat too long, neither of us looked away. I broke the silence first, pushing my chair back and forcing a laugh that sounded brittle in my own ears. "You should get going before the roads flood," I said, gathering the empty cups. But as he stood by the door, pulling his jacket on, his hand brushed mine. Light, accidental, yet lingering. It was nothing and everything all at once. My pulse quickened, and I saw in his eyes the question neither of us dared to voice. That night, I lay awake beside Daniel, listening to his steady breathing, my mind replaying the briefest touch of Michael's hand. It should have been insignificant. It wasn't. Something had shifted, quietly but irrevocably. And though neither of us had spoken it aloud, I knew the silence between Michael and me now carried more weight than any words could. The days that followed were ordinary on the surface, yet nothing felt ordinary inside me. I carried Michael's touch like a secret, hidden beneath my skin. It haunted me while folding laundry, simmering soup, or sitting through Daniel's distracted recaps of his workday. The world looked the same, but I no longer did. Michael, for his part, didn't avoid me. If anything, he sought me out more often, though neither of us acknowledged what simmered between us. His knocks on the door became familiar, each one sending a rush of nerves through me. The kids greeted him with squeals, tugging him toward their games, and Daniel welcomed him with a distracted grin when their schedules overlapped. No one suspected anything, perhaps because nothing had technically happened. But in my mind, in my heart, I knew the boundaries had already begun to blur. One afternoon, when Daniel was away on a business trip, Michael stopped by with a bag of groceries. "Thought you could use a break," he said, setting them on the counter. The gesture was so simple, yet it struck me harder than it should have. Daniel rarely noticed the small ways I tired myself out. Michael did. We cooked together, the kitchen filling with the scent of garlic and rosemary. It felt natural, almost domestic, yet edged with tension that neither of us named. At one point, as I reached for a pan, Michael steadied my hand with his. His touch lingered just long enough for my breath to falter. "Emily," he said quietly, his voice low. "I don't want to complicate your life." The honesty in his tone left me unmoored. He didn't have to finish the sentence. I understood. We both knew what lived in the spaces between our words. I stepped back, shaking my head as if to scatter the thoughts that pressed against me. "It's complicated already," I whispered. Though whether I meant his life, mine, or the invisible thread pulling us together, I wasn't sure. We ate in silence, both pretending to focus on the food while our thoughts churned elsewhere. When he finally left that night, the emptiness of the house felt sharper than ever. Daniel returned 2 days later, tired but cheerful, dropping his suitcase by the door. He kissed my cheek absently and asked what the kids had been up to. I answered, smiled, played the part of the steady wife. But inside, a storm raged. Guilt, longing, confusion. I knew I was standing on the edge of something dangerous. One more step, and there would be no going back. The night it finally happened wasn't planned. Maybe that's what makes it so impossible to forget, how ordinary it began, and how irreversible it became. Daniel had taken the kids to his parents for the weekend. He suggested I stay behind to catch up on rest, a gesture that once would have felt thoughtful, but now carried the weight of his distance. I nodded, grateful for the quiet but unsettled by it too. Silence has a way of magnifying every thought you try to bury. Michael came by that evening, carrying a bottle of wine and a tentative smile. "Didn't want you spending the weekend alone," he said. His voice was casual, but his eyes betrayed more: a question, a hope, a fear. We sat on the couch, glasses in hand, the glow of the lamp soft against the room. Conversation meandered from light-hearted jokes to confessions that grew heavier with each sip. He spoke about the nights that felt endless, the weight of waking up to emptiness, the sharp echo of failure. And then softly he said, "Being here with you, it feels like the first time in months I can breathe." The words struck me like an arrow, because I felt it too. With him I wasn't invisible. I was seen, heard, wanted. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, trembling with what we both knew. His hand brushed mine, not tentative this time, but deliberate, a slow intertwining of fingers that made my heart pound in my ears. I should have pulled away. I didn't. "Emily," he whispered, his face inches from mine. "Tell me to stop." But the truth was, I couldn't. Not because I didn't know the consequences. I did. But because for the first time in years, desire roared louder than restraint. When his lips met mine, the world seemed to collapse into that single moment. The warmth, the hunger, the unbearable relief of finally crossing a line we had been circling for weeks. Every fiber of me screamed that it was wrong, yet my body betrayed me, answering him with a desperation that startled even myself. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and shaken, the weight of what had happened descended instantly. My chest tightened with guilt, but beneath it lingered a dangerous truth. I didn't regret it. Not yet. Michael ran a hand through his hair, his voice rough. "We can't pretend this didn't happen." And he was right. We couldn't. I sat there, glass still trembling in my hand, knowing my life had split into two paths. The one I had promised Daniel, and the one I had just stepped onto with Michael. The question wasn't whether a line had been crossed. The question was whether I could ever find my way back. In the days that followed, life looked the same. School runs, grocery lists, Daniel's familiar footsteps pacing the hallway. Yet everything felt altered. I carried the memory of that night like a secret pulse beneath my skin. The kiss had been brief in time, but its echo lingered in every glance, every silence, every moment I found myself alone with my thoughts. Michael kept his distance at first, perhaps out of fear of what we'd unleashed. When he did appear, his presence felt heavier, his smile tinged with questions he didn't voice. Around Daniel, we both pretended nothing had changed, but pretending only made the truth sharper, as though silence itself was conspiring against us. I lay awake beside my husband, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how I had arrived here, loyal wife, mother of two, now harboring a secret that threatened to shatter it all. It wasn't just the guilt that gnawed at me, it was the undeniable awareness that for the first time in years, I had felt alive. That contradiction was the cruelest part. How something so wrong could awaken something I thought I had lost forever. I began to notice small details more intensely. The tired lines around Daniel's eyes, the absent-minded way he scrolled through his phone at dinner, the way he kissed my cheek without looking into my eyes. He hadn't changed, not really, but I had, and that shift made every ordinary moment feel unbearable. Michael, meanwhile, avoided pushing me, though his silence spoke volumes. When our eyes met across a room, the weight of what we shared pressed down like gravity. Neither of us had answers, only the knowledge that one choice had bound us in a way we couldn't undo. I sometimes imagined confessing everything, spilling the truth to Daniel, facing the fallout, daring the world to strip me bare. But each time fear silenced me. Fear of losing my children's trust, fear of dismantling the life we'd built, fear of admitting aloud that I had betrayed the man who had given me everything. So I carried it quietly, caught between two versions of myself. The faithful wife who smiled at neighbors and packed school lunches, and the woman who had crossed a line and found herself unwilling, or unable, to go back. And maybe that's what this story really is. Not a tale of villains and victims, but of choices and consequences, of how compassion can become temptation, and how a single moment can rewrite the shape of a life. Even now, I don't know where it will lead. I only know that he was struggling, and I couldn't just stand by. And the truth is, I'm no longer sure whether that act of kindness was the beginning of his healing or the start of my undoing.